Hi, everyone. A few people in the discussion forum raised some questions about the allostatic discussion and light side and dark side. So I thought I'd say a few things about that. If you look at the subtitle of this chapter, A Hedonic Calvinist View, we can get some information right there. Hedonic from hedonism, which is the belief that pleasure or good is the purpose of life, or the principal good from life, to lead a life of pleasure. That's hedonism. So hedonic. Calvinism comes from the Protestant view of the 19th century, earlier than that, but spelled out by Max Weber, the sociologist in the 19th century, that hard work in this life will reward you in the afterlife. So it's from the famous work, The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism by Max Weber. So we've got hedonism, which is to find pleasure, and that's our primary goal. And Calvinism, just the opposite. You work hard, you don't have pleasure, it'll pay off for you in the afterlife. So the author is suggesting here a conflict, a contradiction, when he wants to talk about how addiction works. So we talk about allostasis, which is change that brings about balance, change that the body is going through to bring us back to homeostasis, which is balance. All right. So allostasis is change leading to balance. So the use of drugs, obviously, drugs bring about a feeling of pleasure, a positive hedonic effect. We feel good if we use drugs. But as the drugs wear off, the body responds to this with a negative hedonic effect, which is this craving or imbalance or feeling of stress. So this is the dark side that the author talks about. Drugs are again introduced into the body, and the light side effect comes about again. So if I go back, I didn't mention that when we talk about the use of drugs bringing about this positive effect, we can think of this as a light side maybe, and then the craving becomes a dark side. He takes us in a somewhat different direction though, and this is maybe where some of the confusion comes in. So the body, in response to this continual input of a foreign substance, excuse me, increases the intensity of the dark side response. So this is tolerance. The body is saying, wait a minute, that's not working anymore. I'm going to push a little harder. You're going to have to give me more drug to get me back up to that initial level. So this back and forth is allostasis. The body's trying to get back in balance. The drug user has upset the balance by introducing foreign substances, the drugs. And the body has responded by raising the floor, so to speak, raising the ante. You're going to have to do more in order for me, the body, to respond the same way I did the first time you put this substance in my body, in me. So the back and forth is allostasis. To quote from page 41, the process of maintaining apparent reward function stability through changes in brain reward and stress mechanism. All right, so we want to keep the reward center operating in the same way it did the first time you used drugs. So this is going to affect our dopamine levels, and it's going to affect the stress that comes about when we stop using the drugs. So think of this back and forth, this allostasis, this contradiction, again, the hedonic and the Calvinist contradiction, working in the body while drugs are coming in, wearing off, more drugs come in, they wear off, more drugs come in, etc. So what happens is, and this is where we go to the light side and dark side, because of the ongoing drug use, this allostasis, this changes that the body's going through to try and get back to balance, is going to bring decreases in dopamine production. We've talked about that before. It's going to bring decreases in opioid peptides. Those are the things that help us deal with pain, naturally occurring substances in our body that help us deal with pain. and it's going to reduce GABAs. So that's the light side. At the same time, the brain is going to activate the stress responses. This is going to bring about increases in the CRF, the corticotropin releasing factor that you read about earlier in the same chapter. This is the dark side. So we're decreasing the good stuff. We're decreasing dopamine. We're just decreasing the opioid peptides, and GABA, and increasing the stress levels. And so we've got this contradiction going on, this conflict rather, all the time. As long as drugs are introduced, body wears off, more drugs come back, body wears off, and continual process of allostasis, trying to bring us back to homeostasis or balance. So, well, this is, as I say, the baseline is always being raised. The brain is always saying more, 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 more. You keep using, I'm going to get tolerant to it. I'm not going to be able to produce dopamine, and you're going to have to give me more of this foreign substance. So more drug is needed to get the same high, less dopamine produced, greater stress levels result. So let's say that person then stops using drugs. You can see how easily relapse is going to occur in a relatively short period of time. That person is having to deal with all these body changes, the body not being able to produce that dopamine, stress levels still high, and no drugs coming in to balance it out. So that process of allostasis now is kind of one-sided. All the negative stuff is happening. None of the so-called positive, if you will, the drugs coming in to help balance it out is happening, and it's all negative. And they're trying to recover from that and deal with their recovery, deal with their sobriety, not having the drug, a lot of stress, body is aching. It's just not, things don't feel natural. They don't feel good. And so that's what's going on when in the initial stages of sobriety. And so again, relapse is going to happen. It's just going to happen. It's part of the picture. So I hope that helps with that light side, dark side, and allostasis. Also wanted to say something about Requiem. Your comments for Requiem are really great. I mean, everybody is right on with all the possibilities here of different types of addiction, the different characters and the different ways that they all find themselves on this slippery slope. Those of you that finished the book know what's happened already, and the rest of you can predict it. There's no happy endings here. Your views on it are great. You're seeing the different ways that addiction can come about, and the different ways that they're portrayed in this book with these different characters. A week from today, your review of Requiem is due. So just wanted to say a word about that. I urge you to go back to the assignments document and look at what I've put on here under assignment and the kinds of things I'm looking for, ways you can go about, going back over the book and thinking about what it means to you. One thing I say in here, I just want to read it at the bottom of the second page of assignments. What I'm looking for in this assignment are broad brushstrokes regarding the concepts illustrated by this story. For example, addiction, psychopathology, interpersonal dynamics. Not details of the story itself. I don't want you to retell me the story. I know the story. You know the story. I know you know the story. So I want you to look at the broad concepts that come through to you from this book, along with, obviously, the Rethinking Substance Abuse book. Tying all that in, I don't want you to talk about rethinking substance abuse. What I mean is that you've learned from that, you've learned from the DVD, you've learned from your own experience, but I want you to talk about Requiem in a broad conceptual way. See what else I say here. Of course, it is useful, if not necessary, for you to offer certain details in order to illustrate the concept you're focusing on. In short, I know you know the story. I know the story, and I'm certain you know it as well. What I want you to do in this paper is to tell me how this story illustrates to you the dynamics of substance use, its trajectory, its outcomes, the psychological dynamics of the characters involved, etc. Okay, so take a step back from the book. Don't tell me the story. obviously you're going to have examples of a character saying something or doing something, but I want you to talk about addiction. I want you to talk about what this book means to you in terms of addiction, the process, the consequences, how perhaps you might want to approach some of these characters in treatment if you had the opportunity. All right. So use this opportunity to kind of pull together everything you've got from the course so far. And I think talking about a work of fiction is an easy way to do it. All right. Talk to you later.